Father God, I just thank you so much for this day. I thank you so much for everyone that is under the sound of my voice. I pray that this message today and this testimony really of my journey would serve as a blessing for someone in this room and or for someone that may need to hear it. I thank you for everyone that has attended today. I pray that you would have them open their ears and their hearts. If this is a message that needs to speak directly to them, that it would penetrate and hit exactly where it needs to hit, and that they would walk out in obedience exactly what it is that you would desire for them to do as a part of what they hear today. I thank you for this day. I pray that you would bless me and cover me and allow me to speak and say the things that you want me to say, not by my own will, but only by yours, Father God. Give me the words, the directions, the insight, the perspective that needs to be shared today with this group, Lord. I thank you and I consecrate our time together into your hands. It's in Jesus' mighty name I pray. Amen. So if you have never been criticized, raise your hand. Who here has never been criticized? Oh, so I'm in good company. Okay. So I will start off by introducing myself. My name is Magdalena Nichols. I am the Chief Operating Officer at Jericho Road Community Health Center in Buffalo. Okay, you guys got to get more excited than that because I need energy. I'm an energy type of COO. So when I do that introduction and I say Buffalo, New York, some of you guys are going to think it's cold. I want some of you guys to get excited about the idea of chicken wings or something, okay? So we're going to do it again before I get started. So my name is Magdalena Nichols. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Jericho Road Community Health Center in Buffalo, New York. All right, I'm in the right room. Good. Okay. So before we get started, I want to share that there is going to be a gift at the end of this presentation. So pay attention, okay? I am a very precise person, so I literally only have 6 slides. So I'm going to do a lot of talking, a lot of engaging. I want to make sure that I leave space at the end for questions. If you feel comfortable asking the questions in front of everyone, great. If you want to ask me the question on the back end, feel free to do it. Actually, what led me to this topic is really that has been a part of my journey the last 8 months, and it really a testimony. And when I was praying over what to present on, this was it. I think sometimes when we think about whether it's presentations or whatever, that we often want to think about just presenting the good stuff. But today I kind of want to present the ugly because there's beauty behind it and there's a testimony, and I hope that somebody can learn something from this as you kind of continue on in your journey from leadership and or whatever position you're in as a part of the season. So the title of this workshop is called Criticism and Leadership, Confronting the Elephant in the Room. So again, I'm a COO at my organization. I labeled keywords on here. So you see criticism, you see humility, you see mistakes, and then there's a black heart on here. That black heart represents our heart, right? The heart posture that really is impacted when you are criticized. And so it was important for me to kind of just put little images like that to really kind of stick to the heart of what it is that I'm going to be talking about today. So this is my story. The words that come to mind are offended, prideful, hurt, defensive, and definitely annoyed. So last year, I served as the interim chief executive officer at our organization. It was a real blessed journey. I learned a ton in the process. And I remember our CEO now, he was on a sabbatical at the time. I remember before he went, he told me, one of the hardest parts of leadership is when people criticize you. I was like, people have said stuff before, I'll be okay. You'll get over it. But there's something to be said about, when you feel like you're working really hard and you're doing your part. You come in, you show up, you are there for people, you support them, but there's criticisms on things that you're doing that aren't going well, right? For various reasons. And I struggled with it, and I didn't realize how badly I struggled with it. Now, from a leadership perspective, you got to carry yourself professionally. You don't have the luxury of getting annoyed publicly or getting frustrated. You have moments like that, but you don't have the luxury of living there. And so for me, it was about navigating that intentionally as I heard certain things, because it never came directly to me. It was always secondhand, or somebody said, you did this, or this wasn't that great, or why did you make that decision? And really, leadership in itself is an imperfect science, right? You're never going to make a decision that's going to be perfect enough or meets everybody's checkbox, period. You can try, and you're going to have a crew and a side that's going to be like, wow, you did great at that. And others are going to be like, I probably would have done it differently. And so you navigate making these decisions that aren't always perfect, and they're not going to meet everybody's check boxes. And so kind of just navigating that for me and learning it from it. And so there was a criticism that had came, or a judgment that came from someone, and it didn't come directly to me, and it really bothered me. And I'm like, why is this really bothering me? Now, in the past, I've realized that I have struggled with being offended, and I sit in it for a while. I won't show it professionally, like I can be professional and I can smile, but on the back end, I've put you in a box now. And that's dangerous. And so what I realized that a part of the habit was that if you criticize me, I'm going to be professional to you. I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to communicate all the things I need to communicate. But on the back end, I've put you in a box, which means that if you give me feedback on something, great recommendation on stuff, I put you in a box, so I'm not even really listening to you. I'm going to acknowledge what you're saying, but in my head, I can't take anything from you. You criticized me. You judged me on whatever that thing was. And I don't care what your reasons were for it, because you criticized me. And so you're in a box. So I had a few people in boxes. There's a danger to that. And I'll talk about that in a second. And so kind of navigating this season, and then another feedback came back on another leader who had a criticism in how I was leading in that season. And I was frustrated again on the back end. And I was offended. And how dare they judge me? And they got their own stuff, and they're not leading well. They've never done this before. But they have all these things to say. And I was annoyed. I balanced it professionally, smiled, came to the meetings like I was supposed to, had conversations as professionally as I could without necessarily delving into all those pieces, because I'm also sitting in the highest seat in the organization in that season. And so really just balancing it. And I also knew that these two particular leaders weren't the type of leaders who I can have that conversation with where they would just come out and say it, or they weren't going to come to me and say the thing. And for me, because I'm a recovering perfectionist and a recovering people pleaser, that's the part of why I struggled with the criticism. So part of that journey was also learning, what is that root of that offense, right? Yeah, the person said that thing, and yes, it was annoying, and yes, it did, but what is the root of that offense, right? And the root of it starts here with me, right? And so it came down to really kind of just discerning, okay, where is this criticism coming from? And at the time, I was transitioning from being interim CEO to going back to being the COO of the organization, and really kind of just starting this intimate journey with the Lord, because during that time, I learned about a bunch of different things about myself. More of, I don't like the criticism. I can serve in that position and do well, but I don't like the criticism. And I don't like that feeling of that, because I do want people to feel like I did a good job. I do want people to feel like they are part of a process and they're navigating a journey with me and that we're working together. I've always been the type of person where if you're not doing something well, whether it's for you and maybe it doesn't even impact me, I'm going to come to you and say the thing. And so I just want that in return. But I also realize that people don't always know how to come to you, even if you are the most open person possible. When they don't have a relationship with you, when they don't know you super well, they may not feel comfortable coming to you. So for me, that was a trigger, and it contributed to the defensiveness and to the annoyances that I was feeling and to the offendedness that I was carrying as a part of that process. And so kind of just navigating that. And so our CEO comes back, I'm transitioning back to COO, and I'm still annoyed now, because now I'm back to being a peer. And I'm really bothered. Because I'm like, you said all those things. And now, we're back to being, and I'm bothered. And it was growing, and I was feeling it more, and I started to feel the Lord really tugging at me. Like, we got to address that. And I was like, no, we're good. They said some stuff. You got to address them, not me. As it goes, right? And he was like, no, we got to address that. I was like, what? I'm good. I'm annoyed. They said some things. But no, we got to work on that. That is a problem. And I was like, okay. So I start this journey the last 8 months of just really kind of understanding scripture, because it was at a point where I was praying, like, I wanted some quick answers from the Lord. Like, give me some answers to not feel like this, because I'm really bothered. And the answers weren't coming. I was trying to find some quick messages for encouragement. Nothing. My go-to typical Bible verses, they weren't hitting the spot. Praying. Sometimes, have you ever gotten to a place where you pray and it's just like, that didn't work. I don't feel good. That prayer just didn't hit the spot. That's how I was feeling. I'm like, man, I'm really struggling in this season. And so I started to really feel a tug where it was like, I want you to really dive into my word and understand the Bible. And I was like, I mean, I know some verses. I can play a little bit. If you ask me a little question, I might know what the verse is. But it was like, no, I really actually need you to understand my word. Read the books. And I remember buying a devotional and really kind of just starting to delve into the Bible. And I got to the book of Numbers. And it was specifically Numbers 12, 3 through 14. And I'm downstairs, I'm doing my workout, because I work out in the basement at the time, and my husband comes downstairs. And I was like, oh my God. He was like, what? And I just busted out laughing. Numbers 12, 3 through 14. So I read it through the John Maxwell Leadership Bible. And it's an NIV, and it has different verses, but it really breaks down scripture also from a leadership perspective. And it literally said, criticism comes with leadership. I was like, so it's not just me? So this actually happened somewhere in the Bible? And the story was about Moses and his siblings. And if you know the story of Moses, he's leading the people and they have nothing but criticism for him. They keep forgetting all the good that God has done for them throughout the journey, the process. They feel good for a moment and then they're ungrateful again, and they're criticizing him in the process. And in these particular verses, his brother and his sister are criticizing him on the back end. And I was like, his brother and sister are criticizing him. I was like, okay, so I'm not the only person. And criticism is normal. And it happens to everybody. And it's a part of our journeys, period. And what I learned in reading that was there's two things that we can absolutely guarantee is going to happen. When we get criticized, the criticism will always get criticized. And two, the criticism is always going to change us. The decision is, how are you going to choose for the criticism to change you? And there was a time where the criticism was changing me for the wrong, right? You guys remember I said that I would put people in a box. The downfall of putting people in a box is these are people who are brilliant, who have great ideas and insights that I needed for the role that I was serving in. And by putting them in a box, I limited my ability to lead and serve fully well by being able to glean on the gifts of other people that I put in a box. That's one of the biggest dangers of putting people in a box, because they criticize you. And I really didn't want to know what they were criticizing. I didn't care the reason for the criticism. And that's another disadvantage, because when you put people in a box, it limits your ability to be able to hear from them why they were criticizing whatever that thing is. Because at that point, I had decided that it was personal, because that's how I was taking it. And in some senses it was. Some of it was personal, and some of it was really actually good feedback. It was actually good feedback. And when I read this verse, it really hit the spot for me. And God was like, that's it. I was like, I didn't even know that was there. And I was like, okay. And that's where that heart is, because when you look at that, yes, the person said what they said, but then I let things build up in my heart that began to limit me from operating in whom God had called me to be. Because every time I saw that person or those people, those individuals, I got to a place where I had that feeling in the back of my head, or I had that thought, like, I can't trust them. I can't take anything that they say. And those become distractions. Distractions take you away from what God wants you to do, or what God calls you to do. And so I remember praying into it, like, okay, what am I supposed to do with this? And the Bible, surprisingly, gives you all the directions that you need. So in the John Maxwell Leadership Bible, it really kind of breaks it down in detail from a leadership perspective, how you actually address criticism.
And I'm a person who's very forthcoming and I'm honest and I like to have conversations. And I often like to get to a resolution, but sometimes there's really no resolutions for everything or with everyone. But sometimes you just have to address the thing either way. Because for me, it was about me feeling peace for myself and that I said the thing, right? And so I'd been praying about it and I heard, you need to meet with your criticizers. I was like, I am not doing that. And I heard it again, you need to meet with your criticizers. Have lunch with one, have dinner with another. And I was like, okay. And normally what I would do sometimes when I would meet with people to confront something that I had an issue with is I would get there and the conversation might get really good and then I chicken out. Nobody else in this room has done that? Okay. I get in there and I'm like, we're having a good conversation. I don't want to introduce that awkward conversation about that thing that you did that kind of agitated me. And so now I'm just carrying it. And so I've also realized the importance of just addressing it in real time. Take the time to pray over it, but address it in real time. Don't let months pass. And then the Lord said to me, you got to apologize to one of them because you held this from them and they need to hear this. And I was like, I am not going to apologize. And he said, yes, you are. And I was like, yes, I will. And I had to apologize because as a believer, I have a responsibility to them as much as they have a responsibility to me. And what I realized in that process is that by addressing it with them, they actually needed to hear that. And so I scheduled my first person for dinner. And I'm walking in there, I feel juiced. I got my directions from the Lord. You're going to talk about this, you're going to talk about that. I was very intentional about praying over what am I supposed to talk about because it has to be less about me and more about what the Lord needs to say. Because in this conversation, there's something that they needed to hear that was beyond the engagement with me. And so we get to this dinner, we sit down, and they just start talking about all these things. And now I had set the stage, because I don't like to surprise people, that, there's some things I kind of want to talk about when we have dinner, some things that have been, that have been bothering me that I want to make sure that our relationship is going to be good as we're continuing to work together. And so we meet, and they start talking about all these things, and I'm starting to get the feeling, oh, am I supposed to say this thing? And then they start talking, and they say, yeah, one of the things that I've always struggled with is that people aren't always honest with me. I was like, okay, thank you, Lord. The conversation was never about my relationship and my engagement with her. It's a part of the story, but they needed to hear the piece from me because they're not getting it elsewhere. So I was a part of their journey. So I let them kind of talk, and the conversation is good. They're excited, and I'm like, this is good stuff. And I'm just hearing the Lord say, remain the course. You have to say these things, and these are the things that you have to talk about. And I start off by sharing, this is the journey that I've been on. These are the things, the ugly things that I've realized about myself that I'm intentionally working on. And one of the things that the Lord has directed me on is to really work on criticism and people who've criticized me. And you're one of those people. And their face just like, okay. And I was like, okay. I said, so to set the stage, I'm not here to accuse you. I don't want to argue. It's not anything like that. I'm not you would criticize me and because the directions were clear. You're not coming at this from a posture of fighting. You're coming with this to put it out there. And also you want to hear what the criticism is. Because I've been working on your heart long enough that you should be able to receive it. I should probably change the slides, right? So starting off with that first phase is recognizing and understanding, is this criticism constructive or destructive? And there's a difference. Because when people give you constructive criticism, it's good. Like I can always and I think what I realize is constructive criticism, if I have a relationship with you, I've worked with you, I've engaged with you before, you can tell me anything about something I'm doing good or not good, and I can receive it. If I don't have a relationship with you, I might struggle a little bit, or if I have negative feedback about you, or have had a negative engagement with you. So understanding if the criticism is constructive or destructive is an important part of the process. And so we continue. So I wanted to understand, tell me about this criticism. You had this feedback. So after I set the stage of, this is not an attack, I'm looking to understand because I'm looking to continue to grow and to develop. And this is a part of my journey too. And I said to the person, like, the things you said at the beginning of this meeting were confirmation for me that I needed to say this to you. And I actually owe you an apology because a few months ago you did something and I should have addressed it with you and I didn't. So it became a snowball because the next thing that you did, it got bigger in my heart. And I put you in a bigger box as a result of it. And so I actually owe you an apology. That's how I started that conversation, because it's also about humility. So tell me about the criticism. I've heard that you've said this and you've said that. Kind of talk to me about it, because these could be opportunities for me to grow and to develop. So talk to me about that thing. And so we had a conversation, and they admitted to some of the things that they had said and why they were giving the perspective. And other ones that I blatantly asked out, they didn't own, that I knew that they said. And that was okay, because I did my part. But I didn't hold them in a box anymore, because that freed me. Because I opened up the space for us to have an honest and intentional conversation, and it was an opportunity for them to kind of disclose all that. And so they disclosed some, and the ones that they didn't, and that's okay. I don't hold no ill intent towards that, because I have to release that, because I can't be in bondage because of something that you did to me. No, I'm not going to live in a prison. And so the first thing was understanding the criticism. Is it constructive or destructive? And if it's destructive, you have to call it out, because those are always the worst ones, especially in leadership, because it's like a cancer that spreads. And if you don't address those right away, those are bad. And so the constructive ones are always obviously a blessing, because you're able to hear those pieces. But when somebody is destructive, you have to address it. And if they're not reporting directly to you, they're not a peer, it's got to go up the chain. Because if you let it linger too long, it does become a cancer. So that one is a dangerous one that I want you guys to be mindful of. I realize, don't take myself too seriously. I'm cool, but I'm not that cool. I'm human. I make mistakes. I'm not always going to get it right. And again, it goes back to what I said at the beginning. You can do everything right and check off every box, but you're never going to get everybody's approval. And you got to be okay with that, right? I had to learn to go back to what is the root of that. Why am I so offended? Why am I holding on to this anger and offensiveness and all these things? And a part of it is because I've always been a perfectionist as a kid, right? I grew up that way. And so I want people to like me, and now I'm a recovering perfectionist, because I have to cognizantly check myself with that, right? I'm not responsible for everyone's response. And everyone is not going to like everything that I do and or the decisions that I make. And that's about being at peace and comfortable with myself as a part of the process. And so that means that criticism is going to come, and I got to be okay with it, because there's going to be people that are going to say, that was cool. And some people are going to say, that you probably could have did that differently. And that's okay. You got to look beyond the criticism to see the critic. Because again, this goes back to that box. Because if you're so stuck on the critic, they said this about me, you miss an opportunity by looking at where does the root of this criticism. And some of the feedback was actually legitimately good. How it was delivered, and because it didn't come directly to me, made it ugly. So I have a responsibility when I hear things like that now to go directly to the person or persons and say, talk to me more about that thing. And so remembering the posture that you approach that in also matters. Because if you come from a posture of defensiveness and attitude and all these things, people can't receive you. What I realize is that my personality, even though I'm a very, I think generally a very kind person, and I communicate well, I think my position sometimes intimidates people, and so they don't always feel comfortable coming to me. And so I have a responsibility in opening up the door so that they can feel comfortable, and then the rest is up to them. So let me take you guys to the second meeting that I had. This one I was like, oh, Lord, I don't want to do this one. The Lord said, you got to have a lunch with them. And I was like, okay, what am I supposed to talk about? All the things. And we have lunch. It was supposed to be 30 minutes. It ended up being a 2-hour lunch. And this is someone who is not super open. They're not super transparent about themselves and so forth, so on. And so I had to open myself up. Because again, if I put you in a box, I don't trust you, so you don't get to hear all the things about me. You don't know about my kiddos too much. You don't know about my family. You don't know about the things none of that. And it was a 2-hour meeting, and I just said, let me tell you about my journey. That's how the Lord directed me to have those conversations, is to start off by being vulnerable. If you view it as a weakness, that's on you, because I'm strong. And I'm even stronger because I was vulnerable in that way. Start off with my journey, this is where the Lord has had me the last 8 months. And so I've struggled with criticism, and I had you in a box. And they were like, whoa. I was like, yeah. I said, I realized that I put you in a box and I couldn't receive anything from you. any recommendations that you made? And I realized that once in a meeting where they said something and I automatically said, no, that's not gonna work. And it was actually a good idea, by the way. And so we had this conversation, I'm saying all these things, and I said, and I heard, a part of my journey is just kind of really having a conversation with a criticizer. And I'm not here to accuse you or point fingers or get none of that. I want to hear more about the criticism because it could be an opportunity for me to grow and to develop. So talk to me about this thing. And, I heard there's this piece on potential trust and you not trusting me. Talk to me about that. Why do you not trust me? And they gave me a generic answer. And that's okay. Because I said the things I needed to say, but it was a breath of fresh air for them to actually hear me say all that. Because they've never heard that level of transparency, vulnerability, intentionality from me. And so it actually has changed our relationship and how we communicate. And so part of my conversation in that was to say, I'm an open book. The Lord is working on me. I got some things that he's ironing out. And, whether the trust piece was said or not, this is a brand new day. And I'm opening the door and giving you the invitation that if you have feedback, perspective, things that you want me to be thinking about, one, I want to hear it directly from you. I'm opening up that invitation. Because now you can never say I never opened up that door. I've opened the door. And I also said, I'm also going to commit to have very honest and intentional conversations with you going forward. And that if I'm bothered by something that you do, you're going to hear it from me. I'm not going to carry it because I believe you have a lot of great feedback and perspectives and things that I can learn and grow from. And so I want to hear those pieces directly from you. And so it opened up that door for our relationship. And they were like elated. And I was like, I feel good. I feel free. I feel really good. Like I said the thing that I needed to say. And, and I think a lot of times when we humble ourselves and we walk in vulnerability, the enemy also shows up. Oh, you probably shouldn't have said that to them. Now they're going to think you're weak. Now they're going to think you're X, Y, and Z, and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but God told me to do it, and so I'm good. And I don't really care, actually. It may bother me sometimes, but if it doesn't align with what God said, then it's not truth. And if it's not truth, I can't sit in that. And so I've also found myself in this season where when I'm finding myself in a period where I'm fixating and or worrying about that thing that I said or however that person's going to perceive me, that I check it like, okay, is this thought actually true? No. Seems like a distraction because it's taking up a lot of my time. Absolutely. And I got more important things to do. So enemy, I need you to back up. I got things to do. So that's kind of been my checkbox because we all have vulnerabilities. We all have areas of shortfalls, and understanding those roots are an important part of our healing journeys and our processes. And so for me, it was also just going back to my childhood and really looking at areas where I struggled with that and why I struggled with it as a part of my own processing. I remember talking to my husband about it because what I would do is because I also didn't want to get into an argument, I would just put it in the back of my head. And so I would suppress things as a part of my process. So you annoyed me, you agitated me, I don't really feel like arguing, I'm putting it in the back of my head. And I'm walking in this journey with the Lord, so I need to pay attention to him. I can't stay annoyed with you too long, so I'm gonna just put it in the back of my head. That in itself is also not healthy. And for me, if I don't feel heard, my habit was to just stop talking, put it in the back of my head. And I remember my husband saying to me one day, and by the way, wives are always right if husbands are in here. We were trying to figure out something for my son who had broken his ankle and he needed a note for school. Now, I work in the medical field. My husband is in technology. You would think I would be the subject matter expert. He's not in here. He doesn't have any friends in here. We're good. Anything that we talk about in here stays in here, by the way. And I remember saying to him, and I'm just going off topic for a second because I feel prompted to. And we were talking through it, and my son was like, my son has my personality, so he's like, I think I need a note for school. I was like, yeah, I think you do too, so we probably should call. My husband was like, he doesn't need a note for school. I'm like, yes, he does. No, he doesn't. Okay. And my husband kept talking, and I just was like, you're right. Absolutely, you're absolutely right. He was like, you don't have anything else to say? I was like, nope. Kept it moving. The next day we were talking about it, and he said, I realized that even though I gave you the space to talk, you were no longer interested. I was like, yeah. And so you just put it in the back of your mind. But then later on, it's a snowball. Because the second I do it again, you're going to be bothered, this time even bigger. Which is a caution even when it comes to this, which is why you have to be comfortable addressing these things, because they very easily become snowballs. And the very small thing that happens the next time can very quickly become a thing. And so I went off topic for a second, but I felt prompted to share that. So I just wanted to share that to whoever that was supposed to be for. Guard your own attitude I've just talked about. Recognize that good people get criticized. Because I'm a good person. And you guys are good people. So don't beat yourself up about it. And again, I think anytime you're navigating, trying to walk intentionally, trying to be kind to people, but you get criticized, is very easy to take it personal. And I will not pretend to you like I still don't have moments where I may take something personal and I have to navigate that part of the process. But it honestly just comes with the territory. When you're walking in whom you've been called to be by God, everybody is not going to like what you do. Everybody's not going to like the spirit that you carry, the calling behind your journey. And so you can't always take it personal. You actually can't take it personal at all. You don't have the luxury of taking it personal because it becomes a hindrance for you, and it also blocks your blessings because you get stuck in that place. Like when you think about the words that I talked about, offense and pride and hurt and defense and annoyed, none of those align with God. You can be in your feelings and your emotions for a period, but you cannot live there. We don't have the luxury of living there, right? And so recognize that good people get criticized. It just comes with the territory. Keep yourself physically and spiritually in shape. Weariness and emotions impact our perspectives, which is why I talked about the danger of that box, right? Because when you have those emotions towards people, it really honestly blocks you from being able to fully walk out all the things you need to walk out and the things that you need to do. And you may not even be cognizant of it. And so being able to check your emotions and balance those pieces and those perspectives is an important part of navigating criticism so that you can fully walk out who you need to be, right? And again, don't see only the critic, see the crowd. Don't see only the critic, see the crowd. You got to ask yourself, like, is this feedback something that everybody is saying or just this one person, right? Is it just that they have a feeling because it's something that they're passionate about? Or maybe they have feelings about me that they don't like as a part of their process, right? And so you got to be able to look at that full picture, because if it's more than just one person saying it, you got to investigate it. Right? Because at that point, there's an issue that you may be blind to, or you may not even be aware of, that everybody else is cognizant of. And so being able to see the critic, to not only see the critic, but look at the entire crowd and understand, is this something that everybody is saying? Is this just a one-time thing? All those pieces should be a part of your navigation and how you navigate through that criticism so that you can get to a place where you can use it to bless you, right? So again, going back to the piece of it changes you, and you can choose to let it change you in the negative because you shut down, you box people, all the things, and or you allow it to help you grow and to develop into whom you've been called to be. And so I'm in a season now when I think about criticism that I welcome it. It's not always easy to hear hard things about a decision that you've made or something you're navigating or whatever the case may be. I try to make sure that I check off all my boxes, include all the people that need to be included, rationalize and make peace with the pieces that I need to make peace with. But ultimately, at the end of the day, give myself the space and the grace to be able to hear that feedback. Because again, I think about it from a perspective, even when I think about my role, like the job that I've been called to is not a job, it's a calling. And what's a calling is beyond me. And so I'm here to serve and do what God has called me to be, to do and to be for his glory, right? And so being able to sit down with people, that's essentially what Jesus did, right? Like he was criticized, which by the way, somebody said that to me. Even Jesus was criticized. I was like, so I don't want to be criticized. But even Jesus was criticized, believe it or not. So that should serve even as a reminder for you when you feel like, why am I being criticized? one of the most sinless people, actually the only sinless person who's ever walked the face of this earth, was criticized along his journey. And so we're no exemption from that. All of us are cool, but not that cool. And so navigating it in that way has just served as a real blessing for me. And so it's a continued journey for me. And it revealed so much for me in my own heart posture and how I carry myself. Because again, it's beyond just what you carry on the outside. Because I think you all just heard me say at the beginning that, I walk around and I smiled and all the things, and on the inside, I was annoyed. And the Lord looks at your heart posture as you're navigating the journey. And so every time he said that right there, I was like, I didn't know that was there. But peeling through those layers in different ways, this is just one of the layers, has blessed me tremendously. And so any of you, as you're navigating your journey, whether it's criticism or whatever you're navigating right now, allow yourself to peel through the layers. And you absolutely need to go back to the root, because if you don't navigate and get to the root, you're going to continue to experience the same thing, in whatever that is. Because criticism is something that I've struggled with for a while. I've just started addressing it last year. And so peeling it back and looking at the layer and getting back to the root has actually allowed me to tackle it from the root. Because one of the things that I realized as a part of it is that if you don't tackle those things that are hidden on the inside that some people can see and some people can't see, it resurfaces. I listened to a message that said that, the devil seeks the things that are hidden on the inside and will use it as a freeway to run your life and run your mind. And I was like, nope, not today, and not me. So those things that I realize about myself that are vulnerabilities that the enemy can try to use, or I'm peeling at them, because you're not going to point them out before me. I know what they are. So tackling whatever those pieces are, and again, criticism is just one of those buckets that I've navigated. But whatever that thing is beyond criticism, get to the root, address it, and daily, because it doesn't just die after you call it out, because it resurfaces in different moments. Somebody's going to say that thing, and then you're going to have that feeling about it, and it's just going to be like, oh, dang, it's still there. And so even now, I still will hear something, and I'm like, oh, that agitated me. And I have to go through my steps. Okay, is it a legitimate feeling? Am I going to live here? And no. And so I feel what I feel. I give myself the space to feel what I feel, because we're human at the end of the day, and I don't think God is expecting any of us to be perfect, but I will not live there. And that's a critical part of the process and the navigation of these criticisms. I'm going to pause there because I wanted to make sure that I gave enough time in case anybody had any questions, and then I'm going to do my pop quiz for you guys. Any questions? After your lunch and your dinner, how has life been? Really good. So my dinner person, I promised to them when we had dinner that my commitment to them was to always be honest going forward, whether it was a criticism towards me or something that I heard. And so I'm actually due for dinner with them soon, because something came up, not with me, but with others, that if I don't say it, it won't be addressed for them, and then it hinders their growth. And I don't have the luxury of sitting back when they don't grow. And so I'm going to address it with them as feedback that has come back to me from multiple people. My lunch person is good. We're having more lunches. I think sometimes it's also just about getting to know each other. I think sometimes when you know someone a little more, maybe about their family or their upbringing, you don't hold offenses as easily with them. And so we're continuing to know each other as a part of the process. So both are going well. I've had some moments of annoyances that I've had to pray about, but the Lord is seeing me through. But it's been good. It doesn't go away. The person's still who they are, right? And I'm sure I have my moments too that I agitate or offend or whatever. And so that's not my intention, but continuing to have those open conversations has been good. Right. So, I think there's two perspectives. So I think there's two perspectives on it, depending on whether you're in a secular environment or a Christian faith environment. But I think both of them are the same. There's a scripture in the book of Matthew. I can't think off the top of my head exactly which one it is, but it talks about If somebody has criticized or offended you, go to them and you have that conversation. Once you've done that, you take it to the next level. You pull somebody else in to have that conversation. And so I think you follow those levels as a part of the process. So I think if you've had the conversation with the person, the changes haven't been made yet, you invite another person in. I don't know what levels you're talking about, if it's the very top, but there's always somebody else that you could bring in to those conversations to serve as the next level up. So those are the steps that I have followed when I wasn't a director and I was in a position like that. And it should be somebody that's neutral who can hear both perspectives and really serve from a conflict resolution perspective. And that's always worked well. We might do McDonald's for that one. Repeat the question? Okay. So the question was what again? How do you deal with the delivery? So how to address public criticism, deliver disrespectfully and publicly in front of other people. So I would call that destructive. Not in this organization, but in a past season, I have experienced a scenario like that. And same process, and this was when I was a baby Christian, so I was in a secular environment at the time. And I had a conversation with the person on the side. So I don't know if you follow that process yet. But the person was also a peer to me. So I did end up pulling in my supervisor to actually sit us both down, and we talked through the actual examples and the disrespect. It did get to a point where I did have to pull in HR as a part of the process as well, because I went through my intervals as a part of the process. But eventually the person ended up leaving because they just didn't belong there after a while. But addressing it head on is important. I think one of the most dangerous things that we can do when it's destructive like that is to allow it to continue to happen, because it becomes a cancer that other people are watching to see, and then it sometimes can cause other people to also behave that way. And so I don't know if those intervals have been followed yet or those levers have been pulled, but that is the process that I would follow, whether secular or Christian environment. Again, start with your own heart posture. Again, I think it's very easy to focus on the person who criticized you, but there's always an opportunity for all of us to learn from these experiences. And so use it in that way. If there's no further questions, I want to give it a second if anybody else did have any questions. If there's no further questions, I'm going to go into a quick game. All right, you guys ready for the game? Whoever wins, I'm gonna make sure that I get your information, because I'm going to get you you can get a CCHF t-shirt, because I'm on the board, so I got to support our organization. And so I'll get you whatever t-shirt you want from down there. All right. What has been unique about this presentation? Not my presentation, but the slides. If you become so distracted, something that is really big, you truly miss addressing it. If you get so distracted with the criticism, you miss an opportunity to grow. If you get so distracted in whatever that thought is that keeps playing over and over in your head, you miss an opportunity to be used in powerful and mighty ways. If you get so caught up in the pettiness that you got to now say your thing because they said their thing, you lose an opportunity to walk in your God-given gift. If you get so caught up in whatever, it becomes a distraction that takes you away from what you've been called to do. So you get a t-shirt. So you guys got to pay attention. So an elephant in the room is a big thing that we often ignore for whatever the reason, right? So you got to think about that even in your own life. What is that elephant that's big, that is hidden? Thank you for attending.